What's up, CMC students? Man, I miss you guys. This has been so hard to be a part. I'm coming to you guys struggling this week. It's been rough. I'm not gonna lie, this quarantine at times has gotten the best of me. And I just wanted to share with you something God's been teaching me and dealing with me during this time of quarantine. It's difficult being in the same house with my wife. It has forced me to realize the ways that I don't really love her well, the ways that I'm selfish, and God's just issued a challenge towards me, and I think this will reign true for you too. My fear is for you and for me is that during this time of quarantine that we would drift away from one another and drift from God in relationship. And that can happen without us even knowing it. And I'm gonna go to the book of Hebrews and we're gonna talk about this, and it's just a loving warning not to drift away. So I'm gonna read to you a couple of scriptures and just make some quick comments. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "We must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so that we do not drift away." And then in Hebrews chapter 3, it says, "See to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God, but encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness." And then lastly, in Hebrews chapter 5, he's talking about Jesus, and he's unpacking some spiritual truths about Jesus. And then the writer of Hebrews takes a break and he says this in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 11. He says, "We have much to say about this, but it is hard to make it clear to you because you have become dull of hearing." And so in these three passages, there's three words that he says about the people that are going through this trial, and their faith is majorly being tested. And I think that that's exactly where we're at right now. He says, don't drift away. He says, do not be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. And I don't want you to become dull of hearing. And the interesting thing about these three things, these three metaphors that he uses, is that I thought about it, and if you've ever been to the beach and you swam out into the ocean, think about it. What do you have to do to drift away? Absolutely nothing. If you're not paddling or you're not moving, the ocean current is going to drift you downstream, and you may not even know where you're at in about as short as 10, 20 minutes. You may be all the way down the beach and not even have a clue where you're at. Think about the second one, hardening, how it happens just naturally. If you take a piece of bread and you just leave it out on the counter and you forget about it, you come back, it's completely hardened and you can no longer use it. And then the last part of becoming dull. I don't know if you knew this, I did some research this week, and it turns out from knife experts that if you sharpen a knife and you store it, you make it perfectly sharp and you just store it and don't do anything with it, over time that knife will actually become dull. The molecules on the knife will move away from the sharp edge and it becomes dull just without doing anything. And so I think that the principle here that this writer of Hebrews is really trying to capture for us is that, hey, you can drift away you can become hardened and you can become dull without doing anything. You don't have to do anything wrong. You just do nothing. Just do nothing and it'll occur naturally. That's what will happen. And that's what's happened in my life, I think, during this time. And I'm worried that maybe that's happening for you too. And so how do we guard ourselves against that? Well, I think it's just in those passages, there's a couple messages where it says, encourage one another daily in Hebrews chapter 3. And then in Hebrews chapter 5, he says, solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. So this walk with God, our relationship with him, is a constant daily thing. And that's what I discovered in my relationship with my wife. Being cooped up here, I was starting to get lazy in the constant pursuit of relationship with her. And we kind of had to have a come to Jesus moment, and we're good now. But it took me understanding, hey, there's no days off. We might be in a quarantine, but it's a constant daily work to build relationship, to stay close, to stay invested. And I pray that you're doing that in your relationship with God. I had to take a self-inventory this week and realized we just got done doing this series Back to the Basics, where we talked about the spiritual disciplines of reading scripture, of being in prayer, of worship. And with all this time on my hands, I found that those disciplines have kind of slipped through the cracks in my life over this time of quarantine. And I had to have just this moment of realization, like, hey, you're a hypocrite. This is a daily practice. This is something that we need for our spiritual life. It's vital and it's serious. And so I just pray that wherever you're at, that you would just take a self-inventory. Hey, what's my heart like? Is it starting to be hardened without me even knowing it? Am I not feeling anything towards God or towards the Spirit of God? Am I drifting away? Am I a little bit further than I used to be? Or am I becoming dull of hearing? Can I no longer hear his voice? I just pray that if you're out there and you're drifting away, just take a paddle and just start moving towards him. The greatest promise, one of the most encouraging promises for me in Scripture, is that if you draw near to God, he will draw near to you. He promises to draw near to us. And our relationship with him, the reality of it is that it's like any other relationship. It requires a little bit of work. It requires consistency on our part. And the good news is that no matter where you drift, where you go, God's presence is with you and he will chase you down. But you can do yourself a favor and give yourself some more peace and joy if you stay close, if you stay connected to him and to one another. So encourage each other. And I just wanted to give you this encouraging word and let you know that you're not alone. If you've been drifting during this time and getting a little bored, getting off track, you're in good company. And I just wanted to encourage you, like I have, just to return to the Lord, your shepherd. Love you guys. I miss you like crazy. Hope you're doing well and can't wait to see you.